everybody. We're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. You said in September, you warned, as we count every vote, everything possible must be done to prevent chaos, disinformation, and yes, even violence. Do you have any sense at this point why, as you say, this tremendous failure happened? Because, and Christopher Wray said the most dangerous domestic terrorist threat right now is from white supremacist groups in this country. So it's not like people weren't warned.
No, that's exactly right. All that I can tell you, we're hearing different stories from different people. Either it was a grotesque and horrific failure to understand and to anticipate what was happening. I spoke to a very higher up guy while I was in lockdown, and his response was, well, we just didn't anticipate this. Really? Really? With all of your intelligence operations, you didn't know what was going online. You didn't know the threat to the Capitol. You didn't know that the president was egging these people on. You didn't know that, really? So a tremendous failure of leadership, which will be investigated, and we will make sure that never happens again.
Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist 27, "The hope of impunity is a strong incitement to sedition. The dread of punishment, a proportionally strong discouragement to it." Isn't it important that justice be swift and the hammer be hard?
Well, that's among other reasons why the House, in rather quick time, impeached Trump, and why he must be convicted. People ask me, they said, what is the sense of impeaching a guy who has a week left in his term? And there is a lot of sense to it. And the sense is that this president and anybody else who enters the Oval Office must understand that if you incite insurrection against your own government for your own cheap political purposes, that will be severely punished.
I trust that the Justice Department and the FBI is taking this seriously and will use all of the power at their command to bring the people who did this to justice. And certainly nothing they did was defensible. But what about people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz? What about people like Mo Brooks? What about the people who incited this crowd, as I said, and as you agreed, with the big lie? I don't think that's a controversial thing that they inspired these people. What can be done so that no government official ever does this again, and certainly no crowd ever does this again? Doesn't there have to be something? Doesn't something have to be done to them? What can the Senate do?
Well, I think it's something we're looking at right now. And what has concerned me the most, and again, I'm hearing allegations, and these have to be investigated, is that there were some members of the House who actually escorted people who turned out to be rioters the day before through the Capitol premises. Now, what the hell that's about, we have to find out.
And even though that there have been no visitors, no tours of the Capitol since March, not even members are really allowed to bring any people in for a tour.
That's right. So, if that allegation is true, Stephen, if it's true, that tells you something that has to be dealt with.
Well, that's the House. What about the senators? I know you're the world's most deliberative body, but certainly there comes a limit where you have to ask, should this person be in here with us if they're not willing to accept the results of the American people when they vote?
On one hand, you have to be careful about talking about expelling people. I mean, they were elected by their constituents. On the other hand, your point is well taken. And all I can say is, trust me, this will be an issue. How we deal with this is something that is going to have to be looked at very, very hard.
Can you at least make Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley wear a stupid hat that says seditionist on top? They can stay, but they have to sit on a chair facing the corner. There has to be some stain that never leaves them, other than, of course, the judgment of history.
All right. At the end of the day, the crisis is that you had a president who gave us a big, big lie that he won the election by a landslide when, in fact, he lost. And then you had a whole lot of people, not just Cruz and Hawley, who did not say what is simply the truth. Hey, people run in elections and they lose. I've run in elections, I've lost. Sometimes you win. He lost the election, period, end of discussion. And we had very, very, very few senators who made that statement.
Once the newest senators are sworn in. The Democrats, you conferencing with them, will have control of the Senate, and you'll be the new chair of the Budget Committee. What's your first priority?
My first priority is to work on a comprehensive reconciliation bill without getting into all the rules of the Senate. This is a means by which we can pass very significant legislation with a majority, with 51 votes and not with 60. And I'm going to make that reconciliation bill as bold and aggressive as I possibly can. We face more crises today than any time in the modern history of this country. It's not just the terrible pandemic, which has claimed almost 400,000 lives. It is massive unemployment, millions of people unable to feed their kids, people who are being evicted, people who can't afford to go to the doctor because they have no health care. So what we have got to do is respond to the pain that the American people are feeling, which is enormous right now. People are losing faith in government. We have to restore that faith by saying, you know what, we hear your pain, and we're going to respond in a bold manner. And in addition to that, probably in a second reconciliation bill, we have to deal with some of the systemic, long-term, ongoing problems facing this country. People can't live on $10 an hour. We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Insane that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all or have paid family and medical leave. You know what? We've got to deal with climate change with countries around the world, or we're not going to leave much of a planet to our kids and our grandchildren. In other words, at this particular moment in history, Congress is going to have to rise up and be extremely bold in addressing the major crises facing working families and the middle class. And I intend to be very active in that process.
President-elect Biden released his stimulus plan tonight. It's called America Rescue Plan. Can you give us some idea of what it contains?
Yeah, it's a very good start, I think, very serious start. What, among other things, it does in looking at the pandemic, it says we need to make sure that we have all of the vaccine production we possibly can to make sure that we get the vaccines out around the country. We need to do a lot better job distributing those vaccines, getting those vaccines into the arms of the American people. We are not doing that right now. Biden's plan also understands that the economy is in shambles and that we need emergency relief for working families. He is supportive of another $1,400 on top of the $600 we provided in the last bill for working class adults and their kids, extending unemployment, making sure that small businesses are able to survive. So, we're going to have to take a lot of hard look at the details, but it is a very good start in addressing the pandemic crisis and the economic crisis we now face.
If I could make just two suggestions, and you can say, you go to hell, Stephen Colbert, but my two suggestions would be this. One is, please do something about voting rights, because there is one party in this country who wants to get into office and pull up the ladder behind them. And it is very important that whatever gains you make are maintained by free and fair elections, or tossed out by free and fair elections, whatever. The American people decide. But if our voting rights are not protected, and I don't know what can be done on a federal level, because obviously the states control all.
A lot can be done. Stephen, your point is well taken. Look, among the many other crises that we're facing right now, obviously led by Trump, there is a challenge, a fierce effort to undermine American democracy. And the response has got to be that we create a more vibrant democracy, which means that everybody in this country, 18 years of age and older, who's a citizen, has the right to vote. They don't have to wait online for 9 hours. We're going to deal with voter suppression. I think we also have to do with Citizens United and the ability of billionaires to buy elections. But how we create a situation where all of our people understand the political process, can vote as easily as possible, and those are free and fair elections, absolutely a very high priority.
We'll be right back with more Senator Bernie Sanders.